So the interfaces for the 5000 series. Here you can see the Ethernet interfaces, and over on the right hand side the cellular interfaces. So to the status of these interfaces explained in a previous video is illustrated by the icons on them. But if you want more details, you can access them by simply clicking on the interface, and it brings up the interface down below. So we start with just the LAN interface because it's an Ethernet interface. This interface real-time status is here on the left hand side, and on the right hand side you have the configuration. So the real-time status, you can see the interface is fine. You can see the IP address on it and the cable status. The configuration side over here, the note is anything. You can set this to anything you want. So you might call this my CCTV network and click save. Now the direction, this is important. Direction relates to whether it's a LAN or a WAN. So if you want this to be a LAN side network, you set it to LAN. If you want it to be a connection through which you can tunnel out to the internet, you set it to WAN. So this is a LAN side connection. Your IP settings for that interface, because this is a LAN side setting, we have to set it with a static IP. So we've set up here at static IP. You can change it here using this edit button. We currently don't support IPv6. We will at some point in the future. Ethernet settings. This is almost never really used. There is some use cases where you might want to change the MAC on the WAN interface, but you're rarely going to change that. DHCP server. If it's disabled, it'll look like this. And then if you want to enable it, you enable it. Then the start of your range for your DHCP, the end of your range for DCP, the gateway, which should match up with the IP on this interface here. The DNS. Use external DNS sources. Don't use 10.0.1.1. But you can use whatever you want as long as it's not that. Now, if you want to have a device which is on DHCP get the same IP address every time via the DHCP server, you can use what's called a MAC IP binding. Basically, you bind a MAC address to an IP. The only thing you got to make sure is that this IP you're binding to lies outside this range. So this is 2 to 10, that's the range. There's 8 addresses in there, and .16 is above 10, so it's outside that range. The device will automatically assign it the gateway and DNS addresses as there, and if you want to delete it, you can just click delete there. This isn't for where you want to set a static IP. You can set a static IP anyway, as you normally would outside the DHCP pool range. This is where you have a device that's on DHCP and you want to make it like a static, so it always has the same address. Below that here, you have your IPv4 aliases. Now, aliases is where you have a different network connected to the same interface. So imagine you've got your LAN interface here connected to a switch, and then off that switch you have your NVR, but you also have a network of cameras which are on, say, just as an example, this range 250 dot something. If you put an alias on that LAN port for that range, it means you can use like a layer 3 VPN to connect to those cameras in those range. So some people use it for the factory default ranges, where if they are upgrading their NVR and it goes back to factory mode, that they can access it remotely through the VPN. Different people want different things. The reason why it says NAT is simply because any traffic going into that network will be NATed off this address. It will appear like it comes from this IP address. It won't come from your external public IP or your VPN IP. It'll come from this one. That's a subtle thing that just makes all the VPNs and aliases work really well without the default gateway for that alias being the same IP as the interface. So that's really all the configuration there is for the Ethernet ones. If you want to change its name that you see here, you just click on that and you can type it in. Keep that to four characters is best. Any more and it kind of gets all messy. For the cellular radios, there's a bit more in these, but if you click on it, you get the real-time status. This radio has been tested and it says it's fine. You get your signal bars, your technology, and the carrier. In this case, it's 3. Your throughput that's currently going through it at the moment, and the latency to our core network. Carrier status, this is just a bit more information. It's telling me what APN I'm using. Your SIM card. Now, my software blocks out here showing the full details because it's a demo video, but you would have your full ICC-ID and IMSI printed here. More info gives you the IP address information you're getting from the carrier. This is usually not that relevant. The IMEI, which would normally fully printed here, except for it's a video, that may be of interest to you, where a ISP carrier wants you to provide the IMEI for the SIM, because sometimes they lock SIMs to IMEIs. This is all nerdy stuff down the bottom for about the radio status. So on the right hand side, configuration of it's fairly straightforward and simple. If it's enabled, it will try to connect. If you're not putting a SIM in it, disable it to save power. Don't leave it enabled. Notes are similar to Ethernet, just basically what I want to put a description on it, like say, oh, SIM from Vodafone or SIM from XYZ. The PIN number. If you enter a PIN value, you need to put in an ICC ID. If you're not sure of the ICC ID, you can see it down here, and you just copy it in. And what that means is that the device will only use that PIN on that ICC ID because it's unique to SIM cards, and it stops us accidentally running pins against new SIMs which mightn't have a PIN and locking it out. So that's a safety thing, so you need to update the two of them. APN settings, this was normal APN. Auto basically means our device will attempt to guess based on the ICD ID and the network what APN to use. It doesn't always get it right because there's so many of them out there. So to play it safe, you should always enter manually the APN details for your SIM card. And that's basically the interface settings.